Hey everyone, Jackie here, and welcome back to the Woman Kickballs YouTube channel, where every Friday I share more about different topics. And here's a list of the topics, just in case you either forgot or maybe you didn't know about if this is your first video. So really excited to have you here. So this week I'll be sharing about my career insight and some advice along the way of just my experience. And so we're just going to dive right into what that looks like. So one of the main questions that I always get asked about is that people want to pick my brain and hear about my experience. And being that I get a lot of these requests, that's why I wanted to have this YouTube channel, to be able to address just different things from NWSL news or sharing a weekly vlog of what my life looks like, because I'm actually self-employed as an independent sports journalist and a freelance content creator. So I'm going to dive more into about my career and how I got started, just some of the challenges along the way and how I've had to just kind of grind through all of that. So the overall theme, as I've been thinking about today's video, talks about perseverance. And so I'll share a little bit of my career story, and then again, just some examples of different things that I've learned along the way and how I've seen perseverance just be a key component into just this entire experience. So one of the things that I always get asked about is whether or not I played soccer. And I did. I played for nearly 10 years. So here's an embarrassing picture of, just a throwback picture for you with my wild farmer's tan, and all that good stuff. So soccer was a big part of my life, not just for myself, but for my family. I played competitively for a long time through AYSO, specifically on their all-star kind of team. So meaning sometimes I would play against club teams and we would destroy them, and then other times my team was the one being destroyed. So it was a very just competitive environment, and so I love that growing up. I'm very competitive and also creative as well. So growing up, I've always just loved reading books and, of course, writing, and so I would literally show up to soccer practice reading books, and I was just so fascinated with storytelling and seeing the ways that authors could construct a storyline and different narratives and the characters that were involved in it. And so, growing up, I played a lot and I kind of watched here and there. The first game I ever watched was the 2011 Women's World Cup, where the U.S. lost against Japan in penalty kicks. So that was my very first just impression of women's soccer, but it actually inspired me and showed me a really great example of what it's like to persevere. So that was my first ever, just like I said, encounter with women's soccer professionally. And then when I stopped playing as a senior in high school, that was really tough because it was very suddenly I had some health issues going on and just knew that my body wouldn't be able to maintain with the upkeep of what it's like as an athlete. And so again, that was super sudden and just I had to stop playing. And it was just really weird going from being an athlete, giving 110% and, just my life revolving around soccer practice 3 times a week and tournaments on the weekends, and all that just quickly came to an end. And so I had kind of like more time on my hands, but I just started reading books more and writing, and I just knew that I wanted to be a writer and saw that I wanted to write about women's soccer because I started watching the game a lot more. And so that was something where I could have even just given up or not really wanted anything to do with soccer, but my passion for that continued to grow, even through one of the most challenging times of my life as a young teenager. So that's how some of the, ideas or passions behind what I do got started with. And so around that time when I was 17 years old, I actually had 2 people in my life ask me this question. And I share this example because, mind you, you'll hear these 2 very different responses that very much could have shaped the trajectory of how I approached my career or even just had the opportunity to give up, but I didn't. So when I was in high school, my high school guidance counselor asked me what I wanted to do after high school. And I said that I wanted to be a sports journalist for women's soccer, but that I just wasn't really sure what that would look like. And her response was that I should actually not do that because newspapers were a dying business. That was the reason she gave me, which I thought was really dumb because it just showed me that that was tunnel vision into one avenue of what journalism looked like. But I mean, even now, newspapers are still a thing, and there's so many different ways to do journalism. So that definitely could have discouraged me very quickly. But if anything, it just lit a fire up in me in wanting to do my career. And so around that same time, my Uncle Joe asked me what I wanted to do after high school, and I shared the same response with him. And he actually told me, you know what, Jack, I think you should do it. Like, you should go for it. And he just like hyped me up, and he said that I should actually get experience like at 17, which in my mind was crazy, because I was like, oh, I think you just like go to school and then, get a degree and then get a job, and then that's when you start your career. And he was like, no, I think you need experience now, because the world needs to hear what you have to say. And that was like so crazy to me, because other than my parents, like, I didn't really have anyone in my life who I felt like believed in me in that way. I actually struggled a lot as a kid in school, and so it just like really pushed me in the best ways possible. So that's how I kind of got started and like grew in my confidence. But it's been a whole like roller coaster of emotions and different experiences even since then. So then I got a lot of experience writing for different sports publications before college and then during college as well. And in 2019, I branched out and just always wanted to manage my own brand of work. And so that's when I came up with Woman Kickball as a name, and my Uncle Joe helped me get my like domain name and everything. And so I just started that journey and just started going for it. And for those of you who know or may not know, I actually also have my master's degree in journalism. I got that from the University of Oregon. So go Ducks. I'm also wearing a shirt. I feel like that always happens when I talk about Oregon. But so that was a really great time in my career, because I graduated from that program in 2021. So during COVID, I did all of my schooling online here from Southern California. And that was the first time ever in my career that I felt like I was in the right environment to grow, because growing up, again, didn't really have a lot of people as a teenager to like mentor me or have a role model in journalism. I just had to like learn along the way from my experiences of being in the media with my colleagues and just the different people that I interacted with. And so I think for me, like when I look at when I first started doing media stuff back in 2018, I was still in college and just super scared, had no idea what I was doing. And now I've grown so much because I really just like had to own what I do, because as a young Hispanic female, I'm for sure the minority in a room. I feel like any woman is a minority in the media room when it comes to covering games, because, well, for example, in the context of covering U.S. soccer games, because that's all I had when I first started out. Now I have 2 teams here in the NWSL, which is great. But in that experience, I remember going to my first game ever, being super intimidated and just being super scared to ask questions because it was so nerve-wracking. And I always thought that I didn't fit this like mold of what it was like to be a journalist, because a lot of times, for example, in those games, when it comes to U.S. Women's National Team games, you see a lot of high-level professionals coming and being in the media room, and they're usually a lot of older white men. And as a young, female, you just feel so out of place. But I think as I've grown in my career, I've really seen how I get to utilize that to my advantage, in that when I talk to players, sometimes even coaches too, like I actually resonate with them and can relate to them on a more personal level, because they're talking to someone that looks like them. And I'm around the age of these players too. So I feel like being young at first was something that I saw as like this weird thing that I didn't really know if I belonged in the media world or not. And now I've used it to the point where I know I belong, and now I get to just relate to athletes in a very personal way as well. So I forgot where I was going with that whole tangent, but basically, like I said, I could have given up, but I decided to persevere in that and just like going for it in my career. And I think that's a big thing that people often ask me about. And I always talk about perseverance, or just giving it all you have, finding a way to make it work. I think having that mindset is what's going to be a huge difference maker. And I've seen that in my career. So that's just like a quick snippet of that experience of going from being in the media in the early days to like where I'm at now. And so with Women Kickballs, I started out just focusing on writing articles and building that up. And I had a lot of, throughout my career, full-time jobs in the marketing and PR industry outside of sports. And so I've always done that, but I don't know why it took me so long to realize that I could actually do that all under Women Kickballs. So in May 2022, I actually branched out and left my full-time job at a PR firm and left the stability of that and went fully freelance. And so that's what I do now. I'm self-employed, and I have clients that I offer marketing and PR services to, which is really great. But even in that, it's not like, I just one day like with the snap of a finger had market like clients, I had to like put in the work to really build those connections and, just share like my pitch deck and share different things about what I could do as an expert in those areas. And even now, like I still have the capacity to take on more clients. And so that's just something where it really all comes down to persevering, finding a way to make it work. Because what I've seen is that I can have, this person's email or their phone number or whatever, or I know someone who knows them, but it all comes down to you making that connection. And so I think that's what's really important, is that you have to persevere and just continue to find a way to make it work. And you'll be surprised, like the amount of people that I've wanted to work with, where I will send them an email or whatever it is, make the introduction, and I just don't hear back. And that's the reality of just kind of doing this sometimes, is that you don't always hear back, or you just get a lot of no's too, which is frustrating. And so in that, I think it's really important to just keep going and not let that discourage you, because I can list like so many different examples of how many times I was told no or didn't have a response from somebody when they said they were going to respond or whatever. So I think it's just really important to keep going, even despite some of those roadblocks. And one of the final examples that I wanted to share about when it came to perseverance is that, for those of you who may know, I recently published my very first magazine on the growth of women's soccer in Southern California by documenting Angel City and San Diego Wave FC's first year in the NWSL. And this is a magazine that's filled with 40 pages of original stories, photos, and I designed everything. And there were so many just different interviews and games that I went to contribute towards this magazine. I went to 27 NWSL games last year, which is so wild. But within all of that, even from getting the ad sponsors and hosting 2 magazine launch parties all on my own, there were so many moving parts in that. And I could have gotten discouraged when maybe, like I said, someone said they were going to do something and they didn't, or someone didn't respond to my email, or whatever the case was. I could have gotten really discouraged in those moments, but my mindset was, I want to do this magazine because this is what I'm passionate about, and I have the resources from photos and interviews to be able to put it into a magazine, so I'm going to make it happen. And you'd be surprised, I'm not going to call people out, but the people that I reached out to that I wanted to work with that I just didn't, because again, I didn't get a response or something fell through. It was for sure like frustrating and disappointing in that time, but I think at the end of the day, like I had this goal in mind, and that's what kept me going. And so I think it's really important to have goals, or just have like I always talk about it, but have an Uncle Joe in your life that you can go to, who's going to encourage you and push you and just bring out the best in you. And for example, my Uncle Joe like isn't even in the soccer world, or doesn't have soccer connections or anything. Like he's a lawyer, so it's a very different industry, but with that, I think he has a very universal business language and just business mindset that helps me as an entrepreneur, and that's what I really appreciate. So find someone that can be that sounding board for you. Again, they don't have to be in the soccer world like per se, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to you and how you're going to make your goals happen, because like no one else is going to, get me more clients or like do my work for me. It all comes down to my abilities and my skills. So I know that's a whole long tangent and probably sounds like this crazy TED Talk, but I'm off my soapbox now. So just wanted to leave you with some of those examples and parts of my experiences, because I do get asked about that a lot. And I just want to share a very real and transparent perspective that while it is fun to have your own business and really cool to be a part of the sports world, it's also very challenging too. But that's why it's important to have a good support system, have your goals, and just know why you want to be able to make a difference in this role when it comes to your career in the sports industry. So those are just a few of the things that I wanted to share. But yeah, really appreciate you all being here. And if you'd like to stay up to date, just with what I do, you can follow Woman Kickballs on these social media channels, or if you want free access to women's soccer news, you can subscribe to the newsletter and get a free sticker as well. So my whole thing is making articles accessible to people, because I think that's how we're going to grow the game. So those are just a few of my thoughts. And if you'd like to hear more of these videos as well, I have a Patreon where you can check out the link here. And I share a new video every Wednesday on the deep insight and all of my experiences or things that I'm learning And so you get to hear that like in real time because I record them every Wednesday. And so just want to throw it out there for those of you who are interested or want to support my work as well. That's another way that you can do that. So thanks again for being here, and happy Friday. Hope you enjoy just the rest of your day and have a good weekend. So looking forward to seeing you back here next week.